This is the future.
Hello, I'm Edwin Rydberg, and you're listening to the Alternate Futures Podcast, where we chat with indie science fiction creators about their work, the world, and anything else in between. Today, I'm here with DB Goodin.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thanks for being here. So David is originally from LA and now lives in Hawaii. He's had a passion for writing since grade school. After publishing several nonfiction books, he ventured into the craft of fiction to teach cybersecurity concepts in a less intimidating fashion. While he primarily writes in cyberpunk and science fiction, he also writes YA, dystopian, and techno-thriller genres. David works as a principal cybersecurity analyst for a major software company based in Silicon Valley and holds a master's degree in digital forensic science from Champlain College. So thanks for joining me from halfway around the world.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I understand I'm eating into some of your writing time, but you did say that on the weekend you have a bit more time to write, so that's good.
Yeah, definitely.
You're quite prolific. I mean, you've recently published, I was looking through your list on Amazon and almost everything seems to have been published last year. And that's 4 series. So that's quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I published my first novel in September of 2019. And that was my very first novel ever. And ever since then, I've been trying to be as prolific as I can. I write every single day. And, during the week, I can't start until like 10 p.m. And on the weekend, I pretty much write all day if I can.
That's pretty awesome. That's a good work ethic. So before we get really into this, I wanted to challenge my listeners and perhaps you as well, to suggest that your writing invokes elements from, this might seem strange because you've written down a few on your Amazon bio, William Gibson and a few others. But for me, some of the themes and elements from Alita Battle Angel, that one seems fairly obvious, I think. Pixar's Onward and Marvel's Doctor Strange. And so those are quite diverse, and we'll get into how I think those unfold within your stories. But I'll just put that challenge out there for my listeners at the moment. So you're currently in Hawaii, but you work in Silicon Valley. So do you have to commute very often, or is the remote working just working out perfectly for you?
Most of my work is remote, although I do travel from time to time. I was recently in Las Vegas for DEF CON, a hacker convention, actually. And I don't travel that much for work, mainly once a quarter when before the pandemic and everything else. But most of my clients are on the West Coast, so I can basically by 5, 6 a.m. every day, I'm up talking with them, and then around 4 or 5 p.m. I kind of shut the computer off and walk for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, clear my head.
Oh, that's awesome. I actually do have to do more walking myself. So, I mean, are you freelance then, or is it, as you mentioned, you work primarily for the one company?
Primarily for the one company. I'm a full-time employee, and so I pretty much like have all my work dedicated between 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. and then the rest is my time. Then I manage my time in such a way that I can just do my writing, after my family time at night. Then on the weekend is my time as well. So I just go and write as much as I can. Tomorrow I'll be writing all day since it's a holiday in the United States.
Oh, awesome. So would you consider yourself a white hacker then?
Yeah, well, white hat, it's an ethical hacker essentially. And although I have many hacker certifications and skills, I mainly help customers secure their environments. So, anything from monitoring network traffic to intrusions to, regular desktops. A lot of times it's boring stuff, but it's essential to make sure that they're secure.
So what made you get interested in cybersecurity in the first place, and kind of how long have you been in the business?
I started in the IT field in 1989. Actually, I'm dating myself, when I was, fresh out of high school, and I was mainly touching servers, doing like help desk work all the way until mid 90s, and I started doing email work for a while. And I was technical lead for lots of messaging platforms back then. And then I just kind of graduated into digital investigations because I would often get called into the HR department to investigate somebody or another. And then, I was speaking to a friend who was a police officer, and he recommended that I look into forensics and security since I was good at investigating things. So I went ahead and pursued that, and before I knew it, I was in a digital forensics program, and I love putting the pieces together, following the trail of evidence, and peeling back the layers of the onion, right, to to find the one thing you need to prove to put the suspect behind the computer. Yeah,
So it must be very busy these days. It's a growth field, I imagine.
absolutely. I'm busy all the time.
Have you noticed an increase then in various cybersecurity issues, let's say in the last few years? Did it quiet down a little bit in the beginning of COVID and then sort of increase again more recently, or did you not see anything?
Yeah, I saw an increase during COVID. At the beginning of COVID, there's a lots of scams, lots of phishing emails, lots of group texts with sending malicious links. We had that before, but a lot of my you know a lot of the activity I've looked at online as well as with my customers and what I've seen, definitely an increase.
Hmm.
And a lot of it's low tech. They're trying to social engineer people to click links, or they're trying to. There's always been scams, but they'll send you a link and say you've been infected. Click this link to get the malware off or whatever, or you've been identified by the FBI because you have some bad photos on here. We need to, you know, take a look at this. Any it runs a gamut.
A lot of phishing type scams in a way then. Um,
Absolutely.
that's interesting because I kind of had a reduction in the number of those or appearance of them at the beginning of COVID. And then I sort of after, I think maybe in the fall of 2020, they started sort of coming back again, resurging and changing. Of course, they're quite good. Some of them at trying to spoof some of the official websites or official emails.
Definitely. And what cracks me up is you'll get all the bank emails. So they try to figure out where you live. And, every major bank in North America, and even ones I haven't heard of, I get phishing emails from. And they're saying, oh, yeah, we've locked your account. And like Apple, Amazon, you name it, they try to, get those links as, okay, your account's closed or whatever. It's like, you're going to know really quick if you have an iPhone and your iCloud account doesn't work, because it would just pop up with a bunch of errors. But people don't think that far ahead, and they go, well, I need to fix this, and they tap the link, and drive malware happens, and their phone's owned, and all their contacts get harvested, and before you know it, they have more fodder for the spam engine.
Mm. And that is why it's called phishing, isn't it? They're just they're throwing out a whole bunch of bait and see which one you bite at the right time.
Exactly. They just need one person to click that link out of the millions of emails they send every week.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. But I guess it must make them enough money if they keep going at it. Because
Oh
you'd think
yeah,
there'd be easier ways, but
exactly. And they have it down to a science, and it's all scripted, and so it's a little effort. They just harvest the emails and keep sending it, and they probably have systems to eliminate the bounces, etc. And some programs online. If you suspect a spam email, you never click the unsubscribe button. But some email clients will actually do it for you. And
mm,
I always tell people, don't report it as spam, because you may get marked as a valid email address.
okay.
And when that happens, you'll get millions more emails. So
Yeah.
I've seen people do that. They accidentally click unsubscribe, then they get like 10x the emails the next day.
Well, I've always wondered about that because I find also like I don't want to interact with that particular message at all, but I don't know how to then get it out of my box, right? Because if I click on it to read it, a lot of the email programs will then send some message saying it's been read, and then I assume that the senders will know I've read it, and then they'll keep sending it. But if I, like you say, if I mark it as something else, like junk or whatever, then there's a potential that the program also tracks it and does whatever. So what is the best thing to do with those?
It depends on your email client. If you're using a web client, you're at the mercy of whatever you're using on for the web. But I use like Outlook and whatnot, and I can basically say don't send re-receipts, and essentially I can control it at the client level where I don't have to worry about it as much. You can also do it at the server level if you have your own domain, etc. There's a few things you can do, but mainly if you use a like a smart enough email client, you're okay. Or if you use modern email systems like Gmail, etc., usually they're okay, and they do a pretty good job at filtering the spam.
Yeah, so it basically depends on which program you're using. I've
Yeah,
noticed that the spam filters seem to be getting quite strong these days, and I'm getting a lot of stuff filtered into spam that's not spam.
yeah, oh yeah, that's always a problem because they use keywords and they look at the headers and there's a number of things that they scan the emails. Gmail scans every email anyway, so they try to make a guess. And a lot of author promo sites get tossed in the email bin as well, in the spam bin. And yeah, I've had promos before, or I've given things away, and people couldn't respond to me because it got thrown in the spam folder, and I had to like make sure I whitelisted those emails, etc. So I check it every day, make sure that with my author box, it's separate from everything else. Anyway,
Yeah, I do the same. I have to go through my spam box every once in a while, make sure nothing important's got sucked into there.
yeah, definitely.
So what's it like working in Silicon Valley then? Is it just like anywhere else? From outside of that area, it seems like this, great hub of internet and computer activity and where your dreams and nightmares are made kind of thing.
Exactly. And I used to live in the Bay Area a long time ago, and living up there is one thing, but being a part of the Silicon Valley, I guess infrastructure where all immersed in tech, doesn't really matter where you are anymore because you can be a part of Silicon Valley and still, you can work for a tech company and live somewhere else. You're not constrained to the Bay Area anymore. So when I was constrained, like in 20 years ago, it would literally take me a half an hour to drive to work, and work was about a mile and a half because where I lived in Foster City, my office was in Redwood City, and I couldn't take the back road since there was all these wetlands. So I had to get on the freeway for two freeway exits, and that would take me about almost 2 miles. It's about 25 minutes average time to get there, and that was at 6:30 in the morning. I was trying to beat the traffic, and it was raining. Otherwise, I would have taken a bike. So it's refreshing nowadays because you can work for a tech company and live in Alaska or or in my case Hawaii, and since my job description is primarily remote anyway, it doesn't really matter where I live. But time zones can take its toll sometimes because I have some East Coast customers as well, and they schedule meetings at 9 a.m., which is 3 a.m. my time,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
until the fall, then it goes down to 5 hours difference, but it's still a massive time difference.
But it is great that you can work remotely. I know my sister works for an investment company and she enjoys working remotely, which has happened through COVID. But now they're really keen to bring people back to the office or at least be within, immediate travel distance of the office, which is becoming problematic for our current family situation with my mother.
And that's an ongoing problem with companies trying to open up, then they delay it or whatever. That's been happening a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish that one of the lessons we learned from COVID was, flexibility of the workers, because some people really excel remotely and other people really need the office experience. And, ideally, a company should be flexible to accommodate those.
That's true.
So moving to your writing a bit more, I discovered you partly because I recently discovered the lit RPG genre, and I hadn't actually heard of that despite being, a science fiction writer for, more than a decade. And so it's basically the person going into the video game and having the adventure largely blend between reality and the video game. But so how did you get into that particular genre then? Did it just sort of suit the message you wanted to send, or how did you discover it even?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. When I was writing my first novel as a YA, it was White Hat Black Heart, the my very first novel. And it's a YA story about a kid wanting to get a better computer setup. So he's trying to earn money to on the side to get into video games. And so as I wrote this story, I said, okay, let me see what's out there as far as video games stories. I didn't know. I didn't know what GameLit was or LitRPG was in 2018 when I was going back to the story. I started writing the story in 2011, but put it down for a number of years. Then 2018, I picked it back up in earnest. Since I had those story elements to deal with, I said, okay, let's try to figure out what's out there. And then I discovered LitRPG. Oh, this is cool. Then since I've Kindle Unlimited, I started checking out and reading all these books. And then I discovered there's many similarities between what I was writing and what was in there. The only difference was at the time they had full stats. They developed their own game systems, and I thought that was really cool. And my book was almost done by the time I started adopting some of the stuff that they're using as far as stats and keeping track of spells, etc. And I said, that's a great idea, because mainly when I was writing the story, I was actually making up these spells as I wrote. Since I'm a more of a pantser than a plotter, I was writing everything. Then I would put insert spell name here. And I'd go back and fill it in. As I did that, I said, okay, I need to put a spreadsheet together. Then I started looking at the LitRPG stuff, and there's like stats throughout. And it says, okay, I'm gonna have to do, then when I decided to write my first LitRPG story, I have a spreadsheet of every level, every skill, how it gets leveled. And it's daunting because you have to go, it sounds easy, but when you start writing it and says, okay, the character has a level up here. Let's look to see what skills your character used so you can level those up accordingly. And as I was doing it was kind of like lopsided. I would have like a blaster skill, and I would never level it up from one. And go, okay, that's a problem. I have to go back and adjust that, so stuff like that. So you have to be very detail oriented, and I am for work, so it actually worked out, pretty well. So long story short is I got into it while researching a GameLit YA book.
Okay, that's awesome, because one of the first books I started writing kind of led me down that path a little bit, but this was like 15 years ago, and I hadn't discovered LitRPG at that point, obviously, and I did start doing what you were suggesting, like with the because mine was a far future, where there was, where science is largely magic, almost feels like magic. And I did actually start writing down, like you were saying, but I never went far enough into it to get sort of the full system in place. Largely because I couldn't figure out where the story was going to go. I had some great characters I loved. I had a setting. I had some really great scenes, but I just couldn't work out where the story was going. So when you're describing this system that you developed, that reminds me of Interstellar Online. It seems to be the one that you
Yeah.
most use this kind of system. Is that one of your newest books?
Yes, I published that in January of this year. I started writing the book mainly because I wanted to develop a true lit RPG book, and I wanted a space opera, and I wanted Galaxy Quest meets Hitchhiker's Guide meets like Barbarella. Like some sauciness, some and I wanted to challenge myself and write some comedy as well, because I always throw in these little comedic elements throughout my other books. So I said, okay, that's easy. I can do this. Well, it wasn't so easy. I started writing it like in like July of last year. And I didn't finish it until December. I hired a developmental editor, copy editor, and all specialized in lit RPG. And I specifically said, I need for you to call out anything I'm doing wrong, and then I would have friends who are massive lit RPG fans, ready to read the book. And I was kind of fixing things all the way up until publication. It's classic indie author, right? So then I noticed things even after I published. Like, oh yeah, I need to like fix this or fix that, and it was like minor stuff, but it was like, I'm obsessed with quality and completeness. I need to make sure everything's just right before I publish it. You can't always do that, but so with LitRPG, you really have to, because people will call you out on it, right? And so far, the reception has been pretty good for the book.
So it was interesting, like you mentioned the sauciness in Interstellar Online, and I think yeah, it's definitely there. I was wondering, so right from the beginning, so well, first of all, do you have any contact with any of the gaming companies?
Not directly. I know people at gaming companies. Actually, I have several friends I went to school with, or I'm from Southern California, so I know a lot of people in the entertainment industry. Actually, and I've worked for the entertainment industry. So I have contacts there, but I don't really, they don't, half of them don't even know I'm writing books. So, but yeah, it's I don't have any inside baseball into into the gaming stuff, but I'm a lifetime gamer though. So I stopped gaming when I started writing. So
Ah, okay, yeah, the time kind of switches over, doesn't it?
pretty much, yeah, and
Yeah.
so I know all the mechanics and everything, and I know how most of these systems work just based on my 30 plus years of playing games.
One of the things, like, so when I started, well, I'm listening to it on Audible, Blast Off, and right from the beginning, though, the opening paragraphs really reminded me of Gamergate, and I was wondering, first of all, do you know what that is, and was that intentional?
No, I'm not familiar with that actually.
Oh, okay, and so that was I mean, I think it's a few years old now. It was a huge thing, and obviously, it was two sides to it. Well, let's say what happened was apparently one of the female developers had a relationship with a male gamer journalist. And so the claim was that she was, let's say, using that relationship to get unrealistic reviews. So one side then claimed that the issue was about, say, truthfulness in gamer journalism. And the other side claimed it was sexism. You're just attacking her because she's female. And so one of the things with Interstellar Online with Blastoff that does come to my mind is this sort of underlying, well, you could call it sexism in a way, but definitely the males in, at least in the beginning of the story, definitely seem to be very sexually oriented in their development. You know, the naming of the sensual suit, the design of the game itself. So the female character is the project manager, but doesn't seem to have a lot of insight or guidance into the direction of the development of the game, and the men seem to have really introduced a lot of issues like this. And I was just wondering if that was also a comment, or it is just you felt that would make it for an interesting direction for the story. Because I don't know if you're also familiar with what's happening with Blizzard recently, which
Yeah,
yeah.
I've heard that. Yeah, and lately, over the past year or so, I've been trying to write a lot of strong female characters, and some of my themes in all my books is I try to champion the underdog, right? The person that's trying to struggle to work hard and get by in life, etc. And so this, the idea was to have, Cassie, my main, female protagonist. She's fresh out of college. She's maybe a few years out of college, and she wants to make a name for herself. She wants to be the best product manager ever, and she has all these stumbling blocks. Right, the guy from R&D is getting in the way. Her boyfriend, who's a programmer, is indirectly getting in the way, and so she has all these forces that are kind of like tear her career apart. And and she doesn't know much about video games, mainly, but she she is trying to do the best to just be successful. So basically, she tests the essential suit out and goes to the lab to do that. And she's getting all this passive aggressive behavior from this guy named Stan. And then when she gets into the game, she goes, "Oh, this is pretty cool," and she starts having these experiences, and all the while she doesn't know he's like monitoring her, and then this conspiracy, this hacking conspiracy, takes place, and some cybersecurity guy that put hacking in there. Then then I had to, as I was fleshing out the story and working with developmental editors and et cetera, was, she has a conflict, and then as the story progresses, she has to overcome all these problems. And I'm trying to think of interesting ways to do that, since she can't really get out of the game or whatever. So it's like in the first couple chapters you'll know that, so it's not too much of a spoiler, but it's common trope in lit RPG. You get like trapped in the game, or you have some adversity you have to overcome, I mean. And so she's trying to figure out, then she becomes attached to the game, and that's kind of a side effect she didn't expect. So she's trying to get back at hackers who trying to ruin her life. So it's just a classic underdog story in my mind. So and with the Gamergate stuff, I think I may have heard about that, but it really didn't. That wasn't inspiration for the story at all. It was just the way when I was developing it, the way it came out, because female protagonists, and which is kind of rare in a lot of lit RPG stories. You usually have a male protagonist, and I wanted to be different too. I don't want to like have to just have like the like cookie cutter thing, and I wanted my first lit RPG book to be special and unique and different.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. I mean, I've scanned through a few other lit RPG books, looking for authors as well, other authors to interview. And like you say, generally it's a gamer who gets trapped in the game, and definitely in Blast Off Interstellar Online, it's different because she's clearly not a gamer, and she gets sort of sucked into sucked in mentally and emotionally into the universe that she finds herself in. It's quite interesting. There's a lot of themes within, I think, Blast Off, and things that we could explore to large degree in long interviews. Before we get to those, Lush Games, was that an intentional name for the company? Did you choose that? Because she comments that it sounds like a name of a sex toy manufacturer. And I wondered if you
Well,
ever did you ever Google Lush sex toys?
no, I didn't actually. It was when I write, I just like think of names off the cuff and just put them in. I usually try to research and make sure I'm not like inadvertently using the same thing. But now I didn't know that there's like a sex toy for that. But essentially, when she walked into the office, she like the corporate office of Lush Games, the logo reminded her of a sex toy because of the shape of it. And but the company itself was just a gaming company. But thinking Lush, I wanted something unique, so I just came up with that. And I knew that there's like a soap company named Lush or whatever, so it's like, I'd seen that before, and the name just stuck in my mind for whatever reason. And I thought it would be kind of cool concept to think of a company that because if you think about the word Lush, you think of I think of like addiction and inadvertently, right? Because
Hmm.
you're as the name implies. So it's like gamers are getting addicted every day on games, and said, okay, let's. I didn't really have a specific reason I chose it, except I like the flow of it. When something
Nice.
sounds cool, I like it. I put it in there.
I'll leave it to listeners to do the Googling on that. So this is a more adult story than the previous ones. And it
Yes.
does bring up sort of the idea of pornography as a driver for technological development, or at least not necessarily development, but let's say acceptance of technology by the general public. So sort of the general upgrading of technology. I don't know. What would you have any thoughts on that?
Exactly. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the porn industry overall, this is an interesting statistic because I'm a technophobe, that when the VCR wars way back in the 80s were taking place, you had Betamax and you had VHS, and essentially VHS went out because the porn industry adopted it first. And then during the HD, DVD, and Blu-ray battle, the porn industry thought they were going to win that because they adopted the HD, DVD side, and they didn't. That was the only time they didn't get adopted. So, and also way back in the day, the porn industry adopted like interactive CD-ROMs multimedia before a lot of other companies did. So it's interestingly enough, they kind of drive some of the technology. So I thought, okay, this would be interesting since this has happened over the years. Why not? back when I was a kid, we looked at some of the VR stuff at Comdex back in the 80s, right? I saw these booth babes had these like big VR uh, things on their heads, and I thought that was cool. So I tried one of those, and there's like a rectangle and like a ball or something hitting it, and it's like real crude stuff. And then I thought, back in my mind is okay, you know, people are not going to really adopt this until it gets really good, or there's porn or something they can connect to. And at that time, I had a story in my mind I wanted to write about that, and this is a story actually. And so it's like rattling around my brain all over the years, and kind of just came out recently when I started developing the story for Blast Off.
Well, it is interesting the story with Blu-ray you mentioned because from what I understand, Sony really went hard on getting their technology accepted as the major one, didn't they? And to
Yeah,
apparently to the degree where they sold their PlayStations with Blu-ray included under cost in order to get it into the market at a much higher degree than the other competitor. So so that was quite interesting. So I think we're going to come to one point now where I'm going to go back to the first three movies I mentioned. So one of the themes then, while you being cybersecurity, is the use of technology, for example, and the responsibilities behind it. And I think this is where I suggest similar themes to Onward. I don't know if you've seen the Pixar's Onward or not.
no, I hadn't seen that yet. Yeah,
Okay, so it's basically a world where there's magic, but they found that technology was easier, so they adopted technology instead. And I think that's an interesting comment because in the world there's ever-present magic, but it requires discipline, training, and responsibility to use it. Whereas with technology, the discipline and perhaps responsibility comes in the development of the technology, but once it's developed, it's easy to use for everyone, and therefore, in a way, the opposite of the way magic was presented in this movie, and that leads to all the issues that you're largely dealing with, I imagine, because
yeah,
essentially, you make it easy enough that everyone can use it, and everyone will use it however they want to use it, basically.
exactly.
Yeah, I found that an interesting sort of relationship in a way, not specifically in regards to cybersecurity, but I think you get my point. Yeah, and so you deal with a bunch of things in Cyber Teen Project as well as Interstellar
Yes.
Online. And one of the things we see is now, uh, I'm sure you see this as well, or you're at least aware of it, is the attacks now online are also moving offline in some ways. I mean, we've seen that, I think, in the US with the attacks on the pipelines,
Yep.
and we also see, for example, with gamers, um, doxing and swatting, for example, swatting being very dangerous. Um, do you guys in cybersecurity? I mean, I don't know what you could possibly do to catch this kind of thing earlier. Is there any way you could do it? Are you seeing a sort of an increase in these kind of, let's say, what do I want to say, realm kind of crimes in a way?
Yeah, I've actually I haven't worked directly on those investigations, but I've actually talked to people who have. And with swatting and with anything that a lot of that's like low tech, and so there's a concept called open source intelligence. That means you can find all the information to dox somebody online based on whatever they have in social media, on websites, etc. You can do reverse phone number searches. You know, a lot of this is free on the web, and you don't even need a lot of your information. Somebody's name and city is pretty much all you need sometimes to get a full profile of somebody. So it's difficult for investigators because they have to go through and figure out what accounts they use, and they're going to create fake social media accounts, and we call them sock puppets. So essentially, what that is a fake account, fake identity, and there's some facial recognition technology that law enforcement uses and that other investigators use to actually figure out if that's a real photograph or if it's a fake photograph. So what I mean is they'll go to a website that will actually put together a real a face, a human face, based on all these other metrics, and it's a fake picture essentially. And but there's detection tools that will actually figure that out and say, okay, it's fake, or law enforcement uses that. Another way to do it is to look at the what we call the magic numbers. Each each type of file has a unique set of numbers, hexadecimal values in that file, and if they're different, like a lot of times you'll get like a photograph, and I'll inject malware into it, then I'll take an executable and inject that malicious code into a picture, then I'll give it to somebody and say, okay, here's a JPEG, but it actually has a malicious payload that's executable. So as soon as they open it, the executable launches and they get infected. That's just a simplistic example, but that's just one of the attack vectors. But certain programs can figure this out to some degree, but it's tricky because you have to go through and make sure that most of the time people are using fake accounts. And I think we were talking about COVID earlier, and I noticed a larger amount of attacks and a lot of people attacking each other because they're anonymous with a fake account, or they're posting, they're not dealing with people face to face. And if they're not doing that, they're more likely to attack somebody than if they, usually people don't like confrontation as much in person, so you're not going to have as much of that. But some people might be. Long story short is you're going to have more trolls online if they're just sitting at home all day, can't go anywhere, they're pissed, they're looking for trouble, right? So they go out
Yeah.
and do all that. But that's the roundabout way of saying it. There's ways to detect it, but it's very difficult.
And so I remember hearing that some of the social media companies years ago were, I mean, obviously been concerned with this because, like you say, the anonymity is largely what drives a lot of the trolling and the sort of smaller back and forth attacks. Do you think there's a way, a reasonable way that doesn't infringe too much on, individual rights and freedoms to biometrically code your online persona in a way that you are now responsible? I mean, I know that's what they're kind of trying to do, but I think they're going a bit over the top at the moment. But is there a way that you could see forward in this, or is it always just going to be the chaos of Wild West on the internet?
Privacy is big, and a lot of groups don't want biometric data just sitting on a server somewhere because, okay, but one is biometric. There's going to be HIPAA uh, constraints around that, so you're going to have compliance to deal with. You're going to have, and if there's any financial information or PII, you're going to have other standards like PCI or GDPR, et cetera. So you're going to have lots of different compliance mechanisms to deal with, and that's going to make it difficult for that to happen. Secondly, is anything online can get hacked. So if
Mm.
somebody's biometric data is sitting on a server, even if it's really protected, it's possible that a hacker can get in there and get it and impersonate anyone they want from there. So I think it's a bad idea to have it online, but it's definitely a good idea to have biometrics for security. Like when you go into a secure facility, you often have to get a handprint and get a facial recognition or a retinal scan done. So when I do some of my security tests, I have to do biometrics to enter the test center and to leave the test center. So that's usually a hand scan that they have to do, or I haven't seen where they a retinal scan for that, but it's usually in some of the data centers I've worked in where there's like rows of computers, I've had to like surrender my driver's license, get a hand scan, and get retinal scans done.
So do you think online there is a way forward to bring sort of personal responsibility, and
Yeah,
reduce anonymity, for example?
yeah. There's different ways to do it without submitting biometrics. You can use something like a YubiKey technology, where you basically have a hardware key that's registered to your profile, and you can track. You can go one step further and say, okay, I'm gonna geolock it to this one IP. I'm gonna look for VPN known VPN concentrators. That's gonna be a little tricky though, because you can use VPNs and several of them to fool the location. But I don't know, just one way to that comes to mind that you can try to do that. And of course, you can to mitigate those attacks, a lot of times you'll look at systems where someone's logging in London, someone's 5 minutes later logging in New York, 10 minutes later logging in LA. It's a Superman concept, right? They obviously can't be physically in London, New York, and LA within an hour. So, so there's detections that you could do to try to mitigate those threats, but they're not as advanced as I would hope they would be. But there's a lot of robust systems out there that will, and I helped develop some of this stuff. So it's there's definitely detections we can use to mitigate a lot of that stuff.
So you have a technology in Blast Off Interstellar Online, the sensual suits, which I think in Ready Player One were called haptic suits, and
Yeah,
uh, and that's a very interesting technology. And again, we can discuss each one of these technologies for hours just by themselves.
yeah,
But the potential. So you use it in a particular way in the book, but it would appear to me that you could theoretically use it to potentially modulate a person's behavior if you gave the right feedback in certain circumstances. Is that something you're
right.
concerned with, for example?
Yeah, definitely. Like uh, biometric feedback patterns, and not to give anything away, but later it's explained that there's a tracking mechanism that the company can use to figure out who's using which suit. But I'm going even further with that with Cassidy's Fleet sequel to Blast Off, and that will go into a lot more technical detail about the biofeedback from the central suit and how a persona can get taken over based on what we just talked about, right? With some of the finding biometric data just kind of lying around, and utilizing that, trying to create a back door. So you're impersonating somebody. So say somebody's online with this online world, and they're a celebrity, and obviously a hacker or somebody wants to take over that celebrity's identity so they can get close to somebody that they're trying to infiltrate. They can try to like duplicate that feedback pattern and impersonate it. So I go into some technical detail on how that's going to be mitigated. But yeah, it's definitely something I'm always looking at and worrying about on the systems that I help protect. Is there's a concept known as fuzzing that hackers often will use. So they'll try many different things to break in, and they'll try different patterns of things, different like combinations, if you will, kind of somewhat of password cracking, but they're trying different unique ways to break the program. So it creates like a race condition where one thing happens before it should in the chain of events, and that can cause an exploit, or a hacker can insert some code because the program freaks out and allows some other process to run because it was thwarted because it is acting the way it's not designed to act, right? So it's so people are always trying to figure out how to exploit systems, and that's what I'm thinking about all the time as I'm writing stories like this, is unique ways to just to make people aware of what's the art of the possible on that. So it's not real technology I'm writing about per se, but it's possible based on some of the technology we do have.
So in Interstellar Online, you have the typical RPG character trait system, and it made me wonder. So in a virtual world, so any RPG, you're basically pretending to have those traits. They give you certain advantages, but you're still acting within a certain framework. But the person who's there, doesn't actually have those traits necessarily. They're just given options based on those traits. But using a haptic suit, I'm wondering if to some degree in VR, you could actually subtly move a person's personality traits towards those characteristics, which is a creepy thing, and something you could almost see the power of the state being using or abusing to, let's say,
Precisely.
re-educate people and whatnot.
Yes, actually, as you read on with the book, you'll notice some subtle differences in the main character's, you know, personality, we'll say. So,
Yeah, I did see
yes,
some already. Yeah.
so yes, so that is definitely the case, and it's subtle, but it's there, and it's something I wanted to kind of illustrate is okay, you get more immersed with this technology, something's going to happen, right? Your personality could change. Typically, it's subtle and it's over time, but y- I'm thinking of ways of, okay, how can we accelerate the personality change? And technology and this immersion technology would do that because you're fooling the brain into thinking you're in this other space and you're not, and you're essentially using your visor technology and your suit sensors and stuff to kind of fool your body into thinking you're actually there participating in this other place.
Yeah, it's the kind of the brain in the box made manifest,
Yeah,
basically, isn't it? And that kind of
exactly.
yeah, that kind of brings me to the second of the three movies I mentioned at the beginning, Doctor Strange. So
Oh
so for
yeah.
me, so I actually have an Oculus Rift 2, and whenever I use it, one of the things is I feel is that I'm actually moving myself into another realm. Like it actually starts to feel like you're opening up, almost like putting scuba goggles on and going under the water in a way. And it made me start to realize that this feels like we're creating our own astral plane in a way. Whereas where the Doctor Strange reference comes in, and so we're like we are very literally creating another layer of reality on top of our current reality, and we're gonna eventually have a lot of issues to deal with there. Which reality do people prefer? Which reality should we live in? Which how do you stop people who want to live in the other reality? And just the switching back and forth, because obviously the mixed reality goggles, glasses, I suppose, are one of the big developmental projects for groups like Microsoft right now to bring that into
Yep.
business workplaces. And so, have you used much VR to experience any of this? So, what are your thoughts on that direction?
I have over the years. I haven't used the latest stuff, but I don't own one yet. I was gonna buy one a few years back, and I said, okay, I'm gonna wait a little while longer. Then, as I was running Blast off, I said I need to get the latest Oculus or whatever the latest one is. So I started looking at HTC and Oculus, and there's always this promise of this new stuff coming. I want something a little lighter weight and it has a less no wires, so I can so I can just walk around freely. It's and that's not quite there yet, so it's I'm kind of holding out for that, but I probably will get into that very soon because I want to experience more of that myself. But I have tested a number of those older models. And the Oculus is one of my favorites right now. But I want to test them all. I want to test out this. Valve has one out that looks pretty good, and the Vive, HTC has one. So yeah, I like to look at them all and see which one I like best. But last time I looked at them, there's like all these wires that you like hook to your computer and stuff. So
So they're pretty good right now. So the Oculus Rift 2 that I have is wireless, so it's all Wi-Fi. It's quite a good processor. And the problem I have here in England is that our houses aren't generally big enough to take advantage of of a large
yeah,
VR environment. Um,
true.
but yeah, I'm quite impressed. The big thing that for me now is the weight. After you use it for a while, it really sort of pulls on the skin around your eyes, and you start getting these really weird raccoon eye things. So that's definitely an issue, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if some of the companies can come up with something a lot smaller. And I've heard Apple is working on something, but we'll see what they come up with.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
looked at the weight when I was like looking at all the specs as I was running Blast off, and it's like, wow, that seems a lot. It's like almost a pound on your head, right? It's 15 ounces or whatever it was.
Yeah, in fact, there's a third-party strap that you can use to redistribute the weight more effectively and stuff. And also, there's issues with people with glasses, etc. So there's still
Yeah,
some issues to work out.
yeah, I wear contacts, so after a while I have to take them out, and then I wear glasses, and I really don't like glasses. So something like that. I put headphones on with the glasses to get all bunched up and stuff sometimes. So yeah, I can't imagine with a Oculus where you have to like adjust your glasses in a special position probably to even see
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, my experience with VR has generally been positive, but like I say, really eye-opening. And I can see how almost every aspect of your life, especially in, for example, a lockdown scenario, could really be somewhat duplicated, especially if you have like a haptic or sensual suit that you can just imagine the possibilities as you already have in your book. Um,
Exactly.
to those degrees. The next one, mixed reality, is going to be really strange because if you have normal goggles with mixed reality, then you can essentially live in whatever environment you want within the real world. You can reskin all the objects in the real world to however you want. You want to live in a cartoon world, you're in a cartoon world, basically.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's going to be just crazy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because you have that now with AR stuff, right? And Microsoft's been doing that a while with their HoloLens and all that.
Yeah, yeah,
So to me, AR is better because you can actually see what's around you. With VR, you're kind of blinded to your environment. So that's one thing I don't like about VR is I like to be aware of my surroundings. So I don't want
yeah.
to be like running into something, or my office is smaller than my office was in California. So I have to like, I have limited space here. So if I was going to really test that in earnest, I have to go to my living room and my dog would be freaking out.
There's definitely, you could find some interesting and funny YouTube videos about people who get into trouble with their VR helmets.
I
Um,
bet.
yeah. I was just wanting to move on to a couple other. So you have two other series. You have the Cyber Hunter series, and this is sort of where my Alita Battle Angel reference obviously comes in. One of the things that struck me, I think, with the movie Alita Battle Angel, and I like the manga as well, of
Yeah.
course, but the movie brought it home sort of more viscerally. Is the and so did your book to a degree, which is about cyborgs, and the idea that okay, a cyborg has all these advantages, perhaps. I mean, she in your book she doesn't have to eat; she just has the nutrient tubes. Greater strength, greater speed, potentially enhanced vision and senses. But you have a huge weakness that comes in that you gain a massive vulnerability to, well, let's say to hacking, to cybersecurity, to other people abusing you. And for example, you can dismantle the person and keep their head functional and feed them
Yep.
whatever input they want. It's a horror story in some ways.
Exactly. And what I wanted to accomplish, what the message I wanted to come across there was, is it how ethical is it to repurpose somebody's mind and put them in a body that's maybe similar to theirs, and they don't know what's going on. They wake up, and one thing they know, they're in a car accident. Second, they don't know where they are. And in Synapse of Ash, the first book, I open the scene with the main character figuring out where she is, like a process of discovery. In that way, she tries to figure out what's going on. Then later on, we figure out what her real name is, that she has a sister, etc. So she's putting together the story. Then, so the first book is like discovery. The second book is exploitation. There's another cyborg that's trying to do harm to her. So it's so essentially she gets put into a situation where she has to like defend herself. And I go into detail on her nutrient tubes are kind of draining. She doesn't really have the energy. So her AI is telling her, okay, here's foods you can eat that contain these amino acids so you can survive, but it's not optimal. It's not optimized. And what do you do to when you have when you have all enemies and no allies? How do you get out of there? So so that's what I wanted to express there. And then the third book that will be forthcoming in a couple months will take that even further, and that's going to be taking things to another level, because there's kind of like a mad doctor in the second book, and he is running involuntary experiments on all these people, and then they get awakened and say, okay, what's this guy doing to me? So suddenly they get their mind back, and what do they do from there? So there's all these issues I'm trying to bring up with that series.
Yeah, and that's a direction we kind of slowly see the world going in. And it's yet another issue in society, isn't it? It just seems like every issue we have now, there's no cut and dry, good or bad. We're in a period now where both sides have equally valid perspectives, and unfortunately, at the moment, we have no middle background to bring them
True.
together or discuss some helpful way forward.
And there's an interesting story of like some cyborgs actually in our world. There's this one guy that would implant metal into his head, right? Like surgically attached, and like enhanced vision and a couple other things. And he walked into McDonald's in France and was attacked, and they were trying to remove his cybernetics. And he's like, "This is part of me right now. It's you can't be removed, and then obviously we're violating his human rights. So it's that sort of was inspiration for this in a way, because it's like the system's forcing you to be a certain way. It's like it's not natural to have cybernetics. Why do you have them? Let's take them out. You know.
Yeah, and that is a fear right now. It's interesting because when the Google glasses first came out, there was something similar to that, wasn't there? There was the no more
Yeah.
cyborg or stop the cyborgs movement or whatever it was, and people would just like snatch them off you and break them basically. And
Yeah, I
now it's
remember
sort of
that.
yeah, it's taken like a few years, maybe a decade, and we've kind of adapted to them a bit better in society. So people aren't really worried as much as they sort of gradually move in. But like you say, the actual implants is a whole nother issue. And we have sort of Elon Musk's Neuralink coming up now. We'll see how that gets
Yeah.
implemented. So it's going to
Yeah,
be an
exactly.
interesting time, man.
Yeah, that fascinates me, the way, and as we grow in a society, that there's going to be people that want to do this, and I may not be one of them, but there's people want to put like chips below their skin so they can see their heart rate without having a watch. I wear a Apple Watch, so it's essentially I'm keeping track of my heart rate and my exercise, my walks, calories burned, etc. But some people may not want a bulky watch. They want to just have a chip implanted in their skin.
Yeah, well, we're in an interesting time as well where we have to be concerned about being forced to have certain things implanted. So, I mean, the vaccination issue, I think, has brought out to some degree a little bit of that, regardless of which side you sit on. It's the mandatory vaccination, and some companies will not allow you to work there if you're not
Yep,
vaccinated. And then what? So what
exactly.
happens? Yeah. So what happens if you go a step further and you say, "Oh well, we have certain implants we want you to have for security reasons. You can't work here unless you agree to have these implants." So it's kind of a slippery slope in a way, isn't it? The sort of
Oh yeah,
yeah, us accepting more and more invasion into our bodies.
definitely. Because recently I was going to take another exam for work, and they called me up and said, "You need to be vaccinated, or you need to have a COVID test to walk in the door." So I said, "Okay, I'm vaccinated, so it's no problem." But still, it's like it's getting more and more intense, these discussions, and it's becoming personal for a lot of people. So it's definitely an issue.
Yeah, and well, with the current vaccine, with the COVID vaccine, obviously one of the issues is the the speed of the process, so that there's not adequate testing, and you can see this as a sort of natural development as technology and technological progress accelerates. This is potentially going to become more and more common with a wide range of technologies. The idea that okay, well, there's going to be people testing it, but we're not going to know long term effects before it becomes adopted by the general population. And so we're basically all becoming sort of uh, guinea pigs, essentially. Maybe
Exactly.
voluntarily, but it's still an interesting. Yeah, I mean, we used to have time to wait 10 years until we could see the effects, and now everything seems to be accelerated so much more. Speaking on sort of technological effects on society, then, so you have a cyber overture series, which I think is this your fourth and final series of the group, or do you have any more series going on?
Well, I'm actually I do have more coming, but it'll be a while. Yeah, it's my fourth series. I wrote it during the pandemic. I had this idea for a while, and I pretty much copyright all my work in the U.S. because it's plagiarism is real, and people do that all the time. And it's okay, might as well protect yourself and file with the U.S. government. So then I was thinking back, my mind is then I read an article on that website saying, they're trying to rule if artificially artificial intelligence, created manuscripts or music or whatever, is that a real is that copyrightable, and who owns that? And then I started thinking, wow, that's an interesting idea, because what if I write a program that creates all this music? Do I own this music or not? Or does the person who bought the software own it? So I'm thinking of all these scenarios. Then I take it one step further and say, okay, in a cyberpunk world, how would this look? So this mega corporation monopolizes all of music creation and essentially creates robots. And my protagonist, she doesn't like that, and wants to defeat the robots, etc. So I have 5 books on that, and I have a 6th book coming out actually. 5 books was supposed to end the series, but I wanted to take it one step further into a more dystopian world outside of, because it's in the future. It's 2071 when it opens up. What's interesting is my protagonist from White Hat Black Heart, he's a kid in that book, and he shows up in that series. So that was kind of a cool linking of those series. But yeah, that I wanted to explore the idea of okay, if somebody creates a program to create something else, who actually owns that intellectual property? And if this artificial intelligence owned by this company monopolizes it, it's like everyone's licensing it. Nobody owns anything anymore.
Well,
It's the kind.
that does seem to be
Yeah,
the way of the world is going, isn't it? Perhaps by
yeah,
design. It's particularly frightening, I think, for indie developers, composers, whatever, um, because the power of such companies to lobby government to sort of move the laws in their favor is quite worrying, isn't it? So you could see like a company um, lobbying the government to say, okay, look, we earn the right because we have our program here we've created creates all this music. So why do we not have the right to this music? And then it's quite an easy step from there, like you say, to become a monopoly. And this could, of course, happen with writing as well. There's examples now in various places of at least partially written books, and I think initially it will be a sort of hybrid human AI process, but eventually we may not be able to tell the difference between the two. And then of
yeah.
course with AI developing everything much faster and creating things much faster, then will the humans get pushed out?
One thing that I don't think they can really duplicate that well is a writer's voice.
Mm,
So the writing style, they can try to mimic it, but my wife, she reads all my stuff, and every time she reads the book, she says, "I can tell you wrote this because you have a unique voice." So it's even though I try to like change it, it
yeah.
still comes across as my style, I guess.
I wonder about that because I've looked into a little bit of AI authoring software, and you can train it on certain authors' books. So it would be interesting to see how well they can mimic
Yeah,
the actual voice of that particular author.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit frightening as well. It brings up, well, first of all, I didn't mention that I really like the covers of your Cyber Overture series. Very, very
Well,
colorful, very
thank you.
nice. Did you have a particular artist to do those?
Yes, I've each series has a different artist, except for Cyber Team Project and Interstellar Online has the same cover artist, but everything else, like Cyber Overture, is a different artist, and Cyber Hunter Origins is a different artist. So, you know, uh, in fact, Cyber Hunter Origins, it was a bunch of pre-made covers I found online, and I liked them so much. I interrogated the guys that I need to. I'm buying all your cyberpunk covers, and then he kind of changed some things to kind of suit my needs. And then I'm asking, bugging him now for book 5. I want another cover for that. So I love art, and I commission a lot of art for the books. So if you noticed in the audiobook, there should have been a PDF that had the map of the galaxy. So I had hired an artist in the UK actually to create that for me, and she actually the same artist hand drew a map of one of my blast off 2, essentially Cassidy's fleet. which is the world of Erastus. So it's in the Cyber Team Project Book 3. There's another hand drawn map there. So I'm trying to include more artwork in my book. So because I definitely love art and appreciate it. So I want to get as much of that in there as possible.
Oh, that's awesome. If it's not too much to ask, I was just wondering how much would you pay for a cover, for example?
Covers, yeah, it's like $300, $400 at least.
Okay.
I paid more, a lot more. So it's probably like 300 to 400 because if I commission something in the UK, it's pound sterling, so it's a lot more. So $400 turns out to like five something. Yeah.
Yeah, the original artwork.
Yes, all the yeah, because I pretty much have these hand drawings of things. I'll like draw a picture of a map, then I give it to the designer and basically just say this is my vision. Then the designer will come back with some sketches, and then I have all the pencil sketches, all the other artwork. Then the finished product is beautiful by the time it's done, and I have posters of it too. So I'm trying to like at some point maybe I'll sell some of the posters, but I haven't really done that yet. But I just create them because I want them on my wall.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Um, we could spend all day speaking on some of the issues in your books, but I think we're getting on in the time here. So I wanted to end this segment with our two questions I ask all the authors, which is I think we can probably guess maybe from the themes of your books, but which of the many issues facing humanity at the moment would you be most inspired to base a story around?
Pretty much what we talked about, like the exploitation of humanity through technology. Uh,
So like your
like
Cyber Hunter series kind of thing.
yeah, Cyber Hunter is pretty much what I wanted to accomplish. There is and that could be a metaphor for other things, not just technology, but for oppression or for any sort of thing that crushes the human spirit, right? So yeah, and I'm always rooting for the underdog, for the little guy who picks themselves up every day, like everyday worker, and has all this going on, but they do the job, and they take care of their family, and they raise their kids. But you have all these oppressive forces coming at you every which way, and it's even amplified with technology. You get alerts on your phone, you get all this stuff's going on. So, and to introduce new technologies such as visors, such as it's like even like movies like Minority Report. You scan your eyes and you get all these customized advertisements when you're just walking down the street. So it's so all that is intrusive, and so it's like even on television you'll see a multitude of ads when you stream something on cable television. So you know it's just that tailored aspect too, and online they know what your browsing preferences are, so they'll serve you up something based on your browser cache.
Right.
So
Yeah. Kind of the Ready Player One um
yeah,
Sorrento
pretty
with
much.
we can sell up to 82% of their visual field without inducing seizure.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like they have it down to the cent that they can make, right? And
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
all about metrics.
So the second question, then the last question. So again, thinking of all of these issues that society has to face, biological, medical, technological, which concerns you the most, and would be the one that you hope we get right moving forward?
Protecting personal information is probably whether it be biometric, PII, personally identifiable information, or anything that can track a person. Although on the flip side of that coin, I investigate crimes
You
and
track
I go
people.
through and track people, etc. So it's kind of a oxymoron in a way, but I do believe that there both can exist. We and we shouldn't have easy ways to really track people as we are now. It's like any time you sign up to a website, just about you're giving a lot of information a lot of times, and they sign you up in all sorts of insecure methods, and it's better that you know I try to educate people on the different methods, like using multi-factor authentication, et cetera, but nobody seems to do it. Or I'll go to these websites, and if they don't have multi-factor, I'm emailing the admin saying we need multi-factor, otherwise I'm not going to use it. Or if they use something else like Gmail or whatever that has that authentication mechanism already there, it's so that way you can use that instead of introducing more risk, more logins, etc. So yeah, just protecting privacy and people's rights, human rights.
Yeah.
But
Well, maybe next time we meet up, we'll have to discuss the Apple backdoor then.
yes,
It's a
definitely.
whole nother issue, isn't it?
I'm gonna follow that. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So now I'd like to just sort of segue into the second part of the interview, which is the Revenge of the Muse segment. So prior to this interview, I sent you 4 randomly rolled story cubes that represented the categories of hero, action, setting, and science fiction elements, and asked you to prepare a short introduction to a story using those cubes as guides. For those following along at home who'd like to try their hand at this, or to see the images, or to read the story introductions, they'll be on in my podcast section in alternatefutures.co.uk. And so you've agreed to read your story, and then we'll discuss sort of your interpretation of the cubes after you
Yeah,
finish.
sounds great. Now this is a story I just created based on the cubes. It's not based off of anything I've written before, so it's brand new stuff. So that's cool.
Salvador Malone jacked into his personal neural net with the exploits he gained from dark web sites. His gambling debts had left him cash-strapped, so it was time to put his technical skills to good use. NuiCat, the latest in online escapism, developed state-of-the-art technology that would allow anyone to record parts of their lives. Customers could play any of it back, including all the messy emotional baggage. Sal's clients had specific and refined tastes, so he curated all content. He would offer a taste of the online experience he would provide. His client was late, but this was no cause for concern, because they often were. Sal loaded just enough of the footage that his clients were expecting. He would deliver just the action the clients wanted. If they wanted to know what it was like to murder, he could get that. Criminals love recording shit like that. This time, his best client, wanted something unique. He couldn't get it by trolling the dark web forums he usually trolled. He would need to do better, become an active participant. Sal had second thoughts about this one. Sure, the guy whom his client wanted to become was a scumbag. He wanted the thrill and no risk, so the guy was an excellent specimen, but it didn't make Sal feel any better. He made some of his own tweaks to give the client something special. Sal's phone chirped. It was Maggie. When he didn't answer, she texted, "Babe, I know you're at work, but the baby can really use some formula. Oh, were you able to get that advance? Love, Mags." Salvador put on the mask and special gloves. He connected to the local mesh net. All junkies and fixers in Lowtown used it. He could skim the best memories from Mr. Scumbag. A woman with a young girl appeared to talk with his target. Time to listen in. Sal found rooting Mr. Scumbag's infected AR visor easy enough. Salvador loaded the exploit. He saw the girl through his eyes. She was young and pretty, but not of age for anything that Mr. Scumbag wanted with her. "What do you want?" Mr. Scumbag asked. "I hear you pay extra for young ladies." "Keep your voice down. Have her show me the goods." Some unidentifiable conversation followed. "I'm going to enjoy feeding from you. My client loves all the depravity, and you're a goldmine. But I will have a surprise for you once I get my fill. You will pay, and I will enjoy it." "Bring her up to the suites at 9, Mr. Scumbag said. Ah, it's time to make him pay.
So that's what my inspiration based on the story cubes were.
Awesome. That could open a whole new set of discussions on the use of technology as well.
Yeah, exactly. But essentially, the idea I had was based on the cube for the hero was there's like 4 faces or whatever, and they all look unhappy. One kind of looks indifferent, but he's trying to be a good guy in a way. He's trying to support his family. He's cash strapped because his wife is texting him, "Did you get that advance?" And so he's doing all this nefarious stuff, but he has kind of a moral code, kind of like Dexter is for the serial killer stuff. So he wants to, he finds all these scumbags and he wants them to pay. So, so based on the 4 cubes, that's pretty much what I'd come with.
So there's 2 cubes that I wonder how you interpreted. Then there's the like Cthulhu kind of thing. I don't know if you have the pictures
Yes,
in front of you. And
I
then there's
do.
the
I do.
one that looks
Yeah.
like an evil Tribble or something from Star
Yeah,
Trek.
that was a cool one. Yeah, that looked like an alien to me or whatever. What caught my eye about that little guy was, okay, um, I didn't take it literally, I took it metaphorically, because he's the monster inside the man. He's the chaotic good guy that's wanting to make the scumbag pay. So sci-fi element for me was using his neural net technology to actually infiltrate this guy, not only record what he wanted from the guy to sell to his client, but to make him pay, right? So,
Okay.
so that was like a gremlin inside the machine, the evil guy getting all that information, gleefully getting that, so he can use it for good and evil at the same time.
It's interesting.
And the Cthulhu dude is, yeah, he's like a squid or whatever, but to me, it's all his little tentacles represent the all the wickedness that's happening with Salvador. He has gambling debts, he has all these vices, and he's like caught in this entangled web from many different areas. So he's like, one tentacles his wife, one's his client, one's what he's doing, and his gambling. So he's caught up in a web. So that's pretty much what I had interpreted from that.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I'm always curious some of the interpretations, especially the metaphorical ones when it's not interpreted literally. I find it most interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
and the last 2 for me were more metaphorical because it was not literal. I didn't want an alien because most of my stuff I don't write about aliens except for Blast Off, but that's different. But interestingly enough, another point of trivia is Blast Off, that's independent of all the other books, whereas all the other books besides Blast Off are that series, Interstellar Online series, interconnect. So I have some of the cyborgs from Cyber Hunter and the Cyber Team Project, some characters from Cyber Team Project and Cyber Overture. So I try and mix it up.
oh,
I love
that's
Easter
awesome.
eggs.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love doing the same kind of thing. Yeah. So I think we're pretty much done. And before we let you go, I'd just like to give you a chance to mention what projects you're working on at the moment and where people can find you online.
Yeah, sounds good. The 2 projects I'm working on literally as we speak is the sequel for Blast Off, Cassidy's Fleet. I'm giving that to the editor in a couple days, and that'll be released in January 4th. And the next book of the Cyber Hunter Origins will be published November 19th, I believe. And that is almost written. I just need to kind of rewrite some certain things and add some things I was meaning to add. And other than that, I have my comic book. Oh yeah, another thing, I commissioned a comic book based on the Cyber Team Project, based on one scene in book 3. So it actually 3 scenes, but still, yeah, I thought that was cool for because I've always wanted to do a comic. So I'm a huge fan.
I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but there's just so many things to talk about. We didn't quite get to it.
Yeah, but yeah, any other time you want to talk, I'm definitely open to that. So for sure. And thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for joining me today. Thank you for listening. Transcripts of this and all episodes are available at alternatefutures.co.uk, as are the StoryCube images and original story openings written by my guests. If you've enjoyed this, why not share it with friends and other sci-fi fans you know? If there are any indie sci-fi creators you'd like to see featured, send me a message at podcast@alternatefutures.co.uk. Finally, if you'd like to support this podcast financially, you can do so on Subscribestar. Just search for Alternate Futures. There you can find extra discussions and information that hasn't made it into the final edit. And thank you once again for listening. I hope you'll join us on the next episode.
This is the future. Human error. Evolution. This is the future.